Okay, there we are. Hey, everybody, we're live. It did like a little fake out for a second there. I didn't know if we were going live right away. Hey, everybody, we're live. It's Corey Poirier here, but I'm doing things a little different today. I'm jumping in right to say this. I'm actually handing the reins right over to I'm going to say my co-host, but she's more the host here today, who's going to take over and interview me. And I don't get to do that often, so I'm literally going to switch over right now to basically say she's the host. But Tasia Valenza, so excited to have you here today. And Tasia, I'm just going to basically let you take it away.
I'm so excited, Corey, because out of I don't know how many interviews we've done, it's always been you interviewing me. And now I get to flip the script, as our good friend Elise says, Rothman, that today I get to interview you. And it's such an honor and a privilege. It's actually the second time but we did the Clubhouse one, but here we are. And I get a chance to dive into your world and really share with my audience how you have helped influence me and help me gain more influence, especially starting with my TEDx talk, which was really you were so responsible for not only helping me craft it, but facilitate it. So I really would love to dive in today and really help people understand how your journey, how you got to be where you are as a TEDx coach and your own Blue Talks and authoring, helping people get their books out. You really changed the world. So I thought it would be really cool to get a little bit. And then you have all these programs starting that people can find out about. I know the Influencer Vault and then TEDx. So I thought, let's go back at least to get, for people that don't know you as well as I do, your background, how you got to this place and what your mission is.
So, well, first of all, thank you so much, Tasia. And in terms of my background, it probably is best to start there. But I also don't want to keep us there too long because, of course, with something like background, I mean, I could go so long on that area. But I'll just tell people really the core of how I get into what I'm doing and the background. Part of my background was the catalyst for. So the short version is I grew up in a really small town in the smallest province in Canada, raised by a single mother after my mother and father went through a divorce at age 9. And again, when you hear we start in there, don't worry, I'm not going to spend like 10 minutes on my backstory, but just kind of the highlights that tell you a little bit about me. But basically, my mother and I, we struggled financially at certain years there. Obviously, raising a child on your own is not easy. But I learned a lot of life lessons from my mom, and that's why I always mention her. In fact, I learned about compassion from her. Things like she spent all this time buying me a winter coat. One time, she had to work 2 weeks of overtime. And then this kid at school had the same coat, but his was beat up and ratty, and he switched our coats. And so I came home with this ratty coat and said, Mom, we got to go back and get my coat. But she knew who the kid was and the background he had, which was way worse than me. And she said, no, we'll find a way to get you a new coat. And so I never forgot those life lessons. So that's why I bring up that backstory. But also, my mother, and she's open about me sharing anything about her, she finished grade 10 and then went back for her GEDs later to become a secretary. But in between those years, she didn't care a whole lot about school. She left in grade 10. So whenever I was going through school, she wasn't like, you need to have these grades. And so that meant that I had a little bit of flexibility, but it also meant if I didn't like a class, I didn't spend a lot of time in it. And so I graduated high school with one class as a 49+1 where I needed a 50, Asia, which means I barely graduated high school. Having said that, I thrived in business, but anything else I didn't like, I didn't do well in. And then I got into school, didn't know the difference between fiction and nonfiction, hadn't read a full book in my life. Said to my mom, I want to write a book. And she said, well, I think you have to read one first. So not long after, I read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, and then Think and Grow Rich. And I've often said, if you're going to start late, those are 2 good books to start with. So that, I mean, I'd say that's a long, that's 3 or 4 minutes of my backstory. But I think it's all significant because first of all, it tells you I didn't get things written on my yearbook like most likely to succeed or even likely to succeed. It also tells you that you can start late because, I didn't start this really early on. I learned about professional development from that book. Like that's when it started for me. And I was probably 27 then. And so my journey sort of started at that point. I'd already had a somewhat successful career in sales, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't like I didn't understand why I was doing it. I wasn't trying to help other people, but I hit this mid-27, discovered this love of reading, started reading 3 books a month. And then at the same time, I got tricked into doing stand-up comedy. And that turned into me speaking in front of audiences. And that was 20 years ago. And then it built from there. So really, Tasia, those are the 2 arcs or the midpoint where my life kind of took off. And the last 20 years since then, we could dive into some of those areas, but basically I've just kept building on that. So speaking on more stages, learning professional development, and trying to self-learn, but also help other people, push them up to the top with me, and then really just building on that all throughout the years since. So that's me in about 5 minutes, I guess, or less.
Well, I love it only because it does. People always want to know the why, right? The why. What makes you you, and what made this journey where you're helping people like myself fulfill our missions and purposes. And you've done that with so many different mediums, through being a TEDx coach, through doing your own branded talks, the blue talks, so that people who couldn't get a TEDx, who have a mission to give great voice, as I like to say, can get on those stages and share their messages, and even share messages that TED wouldn't accept. So you're this incredible facilitator. And again, it's not just about getting your message, but then who sees it? It's like the tree that falls in the forest. It's like nowadays, if social media doesn't know about it, did you really do it? So that leads me to this idea that, for someone like myself, who's more artist than business person, the same as you, like I don't have a lot of business background, but I have a message and a purpose and a mission. And I get overwhelmed a lot with how to get it out to the world, because let's face it, nowadays there's so many ways to do it. There's so many platforms. It can be overwhelming. So I love the fact that you're doing this influencers vault, because you're kind of, it seems like, leading us on a roadmap of the A, the B, the C, without the D's and the F's and the Q's all in the wrong. It sounds to me like you're basically saving us a heck of a lot of time that you had to figure this out on your own. Is that basically the idea? Because that's what I'm getting from it, that you're just consolidating years of your background to help people get their message out, but strategically and not just haphazardly. Would that kind of sum it up?
Yeah, that's really fair and accurate. And what you said there is important too for me to talk about, because I started this journey, 25 years ago. So 20 years ago speaking, but 25 on this, what we call maybe today experts journey, or whatever we want to call that term. Because when I started, we didn't even use those terms, right? We said he's an author, she's an author, she's a speaker, but we didn't say expert or influencer. And so, having said that, yeah, for me, when I started, it was so different. So when I started, it was the opposite scenario. There wasn't enough platforms. So if you were early on, you were competing with the Carmine Gallos of the world to try to get the same space. And so it was hard to get any media. And I've been through a pretty big journey when I think about it, because 25 years I've gone from seeing that to then all of a sudden where there was just this sweet spot of where there's just enough, and then it went boom right away again. And now there's almost like you're at the restaurant with a menu that has too many items and you can't choose. And so now we're in a new challenge with it's interesting. Some people still struggle to get media, even though there's way too much. And at the same time, there's other people who, like yourself, have great background, like voiceover work, Emmy winner, and all this stuff. And so you kind of could have your pick of media, but the new challenge is, are you going to be jumping on media, and I'm not trying to compare media like this one's better than the other, but are you going to be jumping into things where you're going to be spending a lot of time for little reward, little return? Like, you get on a show with 2 listeners and you don't know it's a show with 2 listeners. And if you only can be on 5 shows in a week, and I'm just using that number, and you're using 3 or 4 of them are really small shows that aren't even in your target audience, that could be just as bad as not doing it in the first place. And worse than not spending that time doing something else. So you're right, Asia. The challenge now is to decide, where do I spend my time? If you're somebody that can get media. And the other part is, where are these media opportunities? So another side of that is there's so many, but also you still have to do the work to get them. So if you want to be on podcasts, now I got to go pitch podcasts. Oh, but wait, I want to be on stages. Now I got to go to events and see if they're hiring. Oh, and now I want to be writing for a magazine. Well, what magazines are actually worth writing for? And so to answer your question, yeah, putting together, which we can dive more into the influence of all soon, but putting it together, one of those things was I wanted to bring those opportunities to you. And then the next thing we're working on now is to categorize them, so that somebody like Tasia can say, okay, these are the bigger shows, or these are the shows that focus on business. And so actually categorizing them. So it's 2 sides. Now you don't have to go chase the opportunities and try to figure out where they are. But secondly, you can say, this one's the right one for me. And so, yes, I am trying to help people in the sense that we're all so busy. Even now I hear people say, well, I'm so busy, I don't even know if I have time for one other thing. But that's the whole point. Let's make that one other thing something that actually reduces the time you're spending in a lot of other places. Somebody will say to me, I don't have enough time. I'm just using that as an example. Come into your influencer vault where you're bringing all these opportunities to me because I don't have time to log in. But then if you start talking, they say, well, I'm spending 10 hours pitching the podcast and doing those. I'm trying to eliminate those 10 hours and only cost you 10 minutes. So yes. And then the secondary part is that we're connected to most of these people because they've reached out to me and said, hey, you want to be on a summit with Jack Canfield? And my answer might be yes. And how many spots do you have? And then I'm going to try to link up 20 people also there. And so the other side is not only are you not having to pitch as much, but these people have come to me and said, hey, yeah, send me some good people. So we're actually helping vet for you as well. So that was a long way to say yes, 100%. We're trying to make the process easier for people. And to your point, Tasia, overwhelm is a real deal now. Like it's as much of a challenge as success. And so also what we've done with the Influencer Vault is I've realized, and I had to figure this out myself the hard way, not even every aspect of the Influencer Vault will be for everybody. So somebody like you might come in and say, I just want that list of those opportunities. Somebody else might say, I just want to come in and watch interviews with Carmine Gallo or Les Brown or Bob Proctor, or whoever. You know, so different people want different things. And at first I thought, I'm just going to make it so you have all kinds of stuff, but then people will get overwhelmed if that's not their thing. So I've had people that come in and say, I just want to see the list every month. I don't care about anything else. I have people that come in and say, I just want to sit in front of Bob Proctor. And so people have different reasons. And so, yeah, it's also about not overwhelming you. So I don't even want you overwhelmed inside there. And so I'm recording a video shortly when we introduce people to say, hey, I know that you're coming into this and there's a lot of things you can go into speaking, category, writing, podcasting. What I want you to really think about is which one are you interested in? So if you are only interested in podcasting, don't hang around in the writing category and get overwhelmed even when you don't want to write. Just go into the one that's important for you, because I think our new challenge is we're in an information-heavy, wisdom-light society. And I think it's Sam Horn came up with the title, but she called it infobesity. We now have infobesity.
Infobesity. Wow. Wow. That's a very cool. Like we're just too, like we're overwhelmed with information all the time. And we're not like really focusing. I mean, literally we're not focusing. We have like 6 seconds of like attention span. But the point is that, yeah, it's really hard to know where to put your influence, right? And so that brings up an interesting question because, of course, for me and many other people, a TEDx is kind of like I've reached another level if I can do a TEDx. So that became one of those goals that you could wrap your brain around, as opposed to a podcast or being part of a book and all those different ways that you can have your influence. And so for me, that's something that I definitely wanted to do. It was a 7-year journey from the time that I said I was going to do it, because I have the newspaper to show the date that I had originally wrote, I crossed out anybody can do a TEDx talk, and I put Tasia Valenza can do a great TEDx talk. And then by the time I met you, I had the ups and the downs, and I met this person, but that didn't go well. And then when I met you, and I knew that you had done 3 of your own, and that you were helping people, and you had your own program with it, I was like, okay, I'll try again. But you were the real deal in terms of really helping me not only facilitate it, meaning like just again the part that feels overwhelming, like, well, how do I submit, and should I go local, you were so instrumental in that way. But you also helped me understand, which a lot of people don't, that TEDx has really their own formula. It's not a normal talk. Even if you are a seasoned speaker, it's not the same. So I just want to give again so much credit to you that you helped me with both the right side and the left side, the creative and then the administrative. And that was instrumental, because I ended up applying to one TEDx. And before I even had time to do the next one, I was accepted, and it was incredible. And it's just been a great value to me. So let's talk about TEDx in terms of, I know you're going to start helping people again. You weren't planning on putting that program, but you're getting besieged with people. Why is a TEDx something to make the ideal goal, and what does that do for your influence?
So I'm gonna tackle that full on, but I also want to add something for people if they didn't. I'm all about, sometimes we say stuff that's so powerful and then we just kind of move on, because to us it's powerful, but we don't. Maybe we've said the story multiple times, so it doesn't resonate how powerful it is. But something you said there, Tasia, that a lot of people don't do, that I think is so insightful for others. It's like one of those knowledge bombs. Is what you said, that you had this article where it said anyone can give a great TEDx, and you changed it to Tasia Valenza can give a great TEDx. I mean, it's the power of vision boards or visualization, what have you. But that's real work coming to life. And there's two things to take from that. One, you wrote it down and you kept it. You still had it 7 years later. Two, it didn't happen overnight. And so there's two things there. One, there is a power in writing it down, and it'll happen when it's meant to happen. But secondly, people sometimes think, well, I wrote it down, it didn't work in a week, so it's not meant to happen. But maybe there's a reason why your TEDx has 200,000+ views now. Maybe there's a reason why you didn't deliver it 7 years earlier. Like maybe there was an actual reason.
I know 100% that I had so much more to say that was meaningful 7 years later. I'm grateful because I know for most people, unlike yourself, you only get one shot to do a TEDx, and very few people get 3 shots. So that's incredible again. But I was told that you're very unlikely. So the fact that I had to wait was incredible. So to your point, I'm so grateful. But I also didn't give up. But I also got a chance to meet you. So
it's a win-win-win. And the other side, I'll add in too for people that wouldn't know this. So not only is your talk done really well, but your talk is, and I don't say few because few is a relative word, right? Because even TEDx events, there's thousands. So when I say few, I'm thinking like it's rare, but it's not necessarily few. It might be 5,000 people, but you're one of the rarer ones where your talk is on TED.com and not just the YouTube channels. So I have 3 talks and only one on TED.com. So, again, yours was meant to happen when it did, because it might have happened earlier. You might not have had the same amount of views, meaning you're not impacting as many people. You might not have said the same stuff. Like you said, you weren't ready for that. And it might not have made it to TED.com. So all of the things worked out perfectly. But I really want people to take away, A, power of writing something down, and B, recognizing the universe will deliver it when it's ready. And why I always think of that, I think I shared this with you, but John Gray shared with me. So John Gray, who wrote Men Are From Mars, shared with me that he spent 8 years setting intentions every day for his book to be the best-selling relationship book in the world. And it took 8 years, I think, almost 8 years to hit the New York Times list, let alone become the best-selling book. Today, his book is 10 times the best-selling book. So it's basically sold 10 times more than number 2. And so number 1, his including overseas sales, is like 100 million copies or something crazy sold. Number 2 is the five languages of love at 10 million, and that's no slouch. 10 million is massive. So my point, Tasia, is I've had people say, well, obviously he couldn't manifest well if it took him 8 years. Have you sold 100 million books? Sometimes it blows my mind. So my point is, it doesn't matter if it takes you 7 years to land the TEDx. The point is the universe still delivered what you wrote down. So I just wanted to get that off my plate, because too many people think manifesting has to happen in a minute or it doesn't work. So that's
100%, because I think we all are so impatient. We're all so impatient, and we want it now, and we want it yesterday. And time is relative, and it has to be in the right time. But I think the idea of never giving up and believing, and again, I took that paper with me, I moved it, with me, and I kept looking at it. Sometimes I got down and I would feel like, gosh, is this ever going to happen? But I didn't give up, and I took another step and another step. And that's, again, the belief, the affirmation of it. And then I like to say the universe conspires to support you. And I don't even know, again, the top ceiling and the terms to meet you, but I'm sure you can remind me. But that's how I got a chance to meet you. But I can't even tell you how it happened at this point, because it's just so magical. And I feel like now I've always known you. But please continue, because I know that, again, people are dying to do a TED Talk, and your thoughts on what it means and how they can do it, and the influence that it can have on their other missions.
Absolutely. So I never used to say this. It just never occurred to me, because I wasn't asked the question directly from people, what was the biggest needle mover for your career? And now I feel I can say almost with authority that it was the first TEDx, and building on to the next one. But the TEDx journey was such a big part of who I am today, meaning getting me there. Because what it did, Tasia, it wasn't necessarily just that I had done it. It opened doors that I probably wouldn't have been able to open otherwise. So I always remember this as a weird example, but I did an interview with Ami James, who is the star of the TV show Miami Ink., which was the precursor to the show LA Ink. with Kat Von D. So Ami was like the first real tattoo reality show guy. And so I wanted to interview him. He doesn't do a lot of podcast interviews. I don't even know if he does any. And so I thought it was a stretch, but I did an interview with him. And when I sat in front of him, he said the same thing as on the Canadian side, for people that are in Canada, Biff Naked, who's a music icon. She said almost the same words. But Ami said, dude, I loved your TED Talk, by the way. And it was not where he saw it was on my email signature. And it occurred to me, Tasia, there's a good chance that the only reason he said yes to the interview is because he watched my TED Talk. And likewise with Biff. So it opened doors for interviews. My publisher, with this book, Morgan James Publishing, a New York publisher, they said one of the reasons, one of the things that got them excited about doing a book with me is that I was a multiple time TEDx speaker. And so, first of all, I would start with, yes, it was a needle mover for me. In fact, this year, I was involved in a Wall Street Journal USA Today best-selling book. And that's the only other thing I could see other than New York Times best-selling book. I could have moved the needle as much as the TEDx if it had happened earlier. Now it's a part of other things, so it's not as big a thing, but that's the kind of stuff. The only other thing I could think of, and why is that? It's because so few people can actually say they've done it compared to the whole world. So how many New York Times best-selling authors are there? Well, there's only 10 a week, and 7 of those spots are carried over week after week. So it's probably only 3 new people a week. So think about that. In all of the world, there's probably only like at the most, maybe 300 new New York Times bestselling authors a year at most. So if it's been around 50 years, like that number compared to 8 billion people is so small, we don't hear it often enough. So we go, that's a big deal. Same with multiple time, or just not just, but TEDx speaker, multiple time TEDx speaker, Wall Street Journal, USA Today. Those are the things that move the needle. And so why would you want to do one? It's because here's how it ties in. It's one of the things that you can do that will move the needle the most for you. It's the lowest cost talk, the lowest you'll ever get paid to do a talk, and it's the highest profit talk you'll ever deliver. Because a lot of people don't know this, but you do not get paid to do them. We even had that conversation on the Clubhouse recently. Somebody thought either you paid or you got paid. You don't pay to do them, but it opens so many doors. And if you look at your TEDx years later, you'll see that it probably generated more revenue than almost anything else you've ever done. So that's another why. Another why is because a lot of things that people ask me is, how do you stand out in such a noisy world? It goes back to our overwhelm. Now our new challenge, as I said, is there's so much media. How do you actually even stand out to a client that would want to hire you because you've done certain things? And the TEDx is one of those things that not everybody can add to their bio, so it still looks unique. And because of that, it still has extra credibility over other things. So I think the new challenge, for example, you can be an Amazon bestselling author, but almost everybody who's a bestselling author is an Amazon bestselling author. So it doesn't look as sexy anymore. You'd probably be better to put international bestselling author than Amazon bestselling author. And so TEDx hasn't fallen into that trap. And to my point, neither has Wall Street Journal, USA Today, or New York Times. So the why is because you're going to be able to be in a place that few people are in. And I'll give people a trick or a hack, which is related to this. If you're wanting to stand out as a bestselling author, again, I mean, everybody, I think go Amazon because there's so many benefits of it. But I would also say get on another list because the work is just as easy, like Barnes & Noble. Because Barnes & Noble is still pretty much the largest book chain, and that carries a lot of cachet. But nobody ever says, Tasia, I'm a Barnes & Noble bestseller. So what it means is when people see that, they're going to look differently because Amazon, I think we're just desensitized now. So that's a long way to say.
Sometimes novelty, we need, our brains are wired for novelty, right? So if something that we just didn't even think about, even if it's not necessarily as prestigious, it's just that because it looks like it's more prestigious just because you don't see it as often. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like Emmy winner. I mean, I told you, I mean, you knew anyway, but I said, I forget, one time we were talking and it was, I think it was maybe when you're Emmy nominated or it was Emmy winning. I don't remember which of the two, but you said to me, what should I put here? What should I put here? And just, I think because you were desensitized and we were just talking about it in general, you said this, nice. No, Emmy winner has to be right there. It has to be the first thing because it's the thing that people don't see often. Kelly Flardo, who I know you know, Kelly has done through TEDx talks to us. And she said she went to an event one time in the bio, they actually moved her bio because she put like 7-time best-selling author, this, and then TEDx speaker. And they went, TEDx speaker, 7-time best. They put it in front. I've done talks where they've come up, the MC, and said, I'm looking at your whole bio. I can only say 5 things. So I know I'm going to say multiple-time TEDx speaker. What else should I say? So they're not even giving me a choice to not say it.
Because everybody understands the credibility factor, I believe, of a TEDx, where it puts you into a title that, like you said, has a certain prestige, that it took a lot to get there, that you just can't get there, even if you're a world-class speaker or any of these other titles, these influencing titles. That's exactly what you're teaching people now, is that there are certain things that raise the bar quicker and how you can jump those levels. So if you have only a certain amount of time to devote and you have a desire to be a podcaster and an author and be on Clubhouse, which is another platform now of influencing, and a LinkedIn influencing, all these spaces, you really have to decide. I would imagine that's part of your program alone, is deciding where to put the most energy, the most focus for what your particular mission is, versus others. Is that something that you go through as well? Because I think, it's so easy, because I'm a voiceover artist. I'm a coach. I'm a teacher. I'm a speaker, right? And I keep thinking, and I don't have a Give Great Voice podcast, which of course kind of is silly, right? It's all about what? Voice. But at the same time, I only have a certain. I'm also a mother and a wife, and again, I'm on Clubhouse with my rooms. One must decide, and sometimes it's for the pure love of doing something, right? You have to go with your gut, your mission, your belief. But is that something that you also help people kind of just figure out how to focus and channel it, and then decide on which part of those platforms they should put the focus? Or can, like, even a question of like, do you post the same post on all of your platforms? Should it be different platforms? These are all questions that I think about every day. And some people said, should you post 3 times a day? It gets so heady. Do you address that in how you help people?
So yes and no. My answer, the first part of the answer is yes, in the sense that what we do, for example, inside our influencer vault, is we're just starting it, but monthly trainings. And so in those monthly trainings, we're tackling that with different people to get their takes on it. But I'm also planning an upcoming training where I'm going to talk about goal setting around influence. So in other words, to your point, I call it pushing over the dominoes, figuring out what strategic dominoes to push over. But it's going to, as you said, Tate, it's going to depend on you. Goal setting. So deciding what people always say, what do I do with my book when I launch it? Well, you need to know what your goal is with the book before we talk about anything. Same idea. So when I look at the person's goals, and we'll talk about that, now that your goal, okay, well, for example, if your goal is that you want to speak on stages, then maybe, and I mean, let's say virtual events. You want to speak on virtual and summits, because there's a different answer for live talks. But let's say you want to speak on virtual stages. Maybe you need to start doing Facebook Live, so you're putting yourself out there and people can see what you can do. And so, yes, I'm planning to go through training like that. But we just had JJ Virgin on like less than an hour ago inside our influencer vault. And that's one of the things we were asking her about, is because she's built, if people aren't familiar with her, she's a 4-time New York Times bestselling author. She's, as far as when it comes to health and wellness, she's like one of the top people. And she's got the book, The Sugar Impact Diet, The Virgin Diet. And so JJ has built a big, thriving business over 20 years. So I was asking her, where should we be? Should we be everywhere? And so these questions you're asking, Tasia, we were just answering this just today. And so, yes, I want to drive into this and dive into this, because this is the stuff we're all losing sleep over. Where am I supposed to put my time? How do I put it there? But I have to say, circling back to what we said about having these things that stand out, like Emmy winner or TEDx speaker, and this just, top of my head, I know you and I have talked about getting you on certain podcasts, but I have a person that I've been working with who's, and I think I told you about this, but I don't think I've introduced you. But he has 3.2 million listeners on a syndicated show. I have another person but you guys have become friends, who has an Amazon Live show. I have a contact of mine that's looking for speakers from Microsoft. Well, it's much easier for me to go to those places, like the guy with the 3.2 million listeners, and say, you need to meet Tasia. She's an Emmy winner and TEDx speaker. That's all I have to put in your bio, just so you know, for him.
And he's going to say,
yeah, hold me to it. Hold me to it. And what I'm doing at is he's still going to say, let's get on a call, Tasia, and chat. And he's going to want to get to know you, but he's going to listen. And so what I mean is, if I rambled on and there was nothing really stood out, he might say, well, yeah, Corey, we'll see if we can get them on soon. But I've seen it already. I introduced him to somebody who, I won't go into much detail, but I'm giving away who she is anyway by what I'm saying. But she created $1 million business in her bathrobe. And so that's all I had to put in the message. And he said, let's schedule a time to chat. Like, nobody's looking for it. And it's the things that nobody else have done. Like, how many people, not only did she create it in her bathrobe, but she created with doing her hair and her no makeup and her kids running around. But that's rare. So for somebody to do that, so that's the takeaway as I'm getting at, is figure out what most people aren't doing. And that's the thing you need to be doing. And the more cachet that thing you're doing that nobody else is doing, the better. So that's what I would say to that. One thing I can give as far as a shortcut or a hack for people, I always like to give something you can do starting tomorrow. So whether you're brand new as an influencer or you've been doing this for a while, and I think you have this now, Tasia, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's what I call the as seen on banner. And so one of the things, what we're talking about, like Emmy winner, TEDx speaker, these are things that you can do And if you can make them happen, most people won't have done them. And so the As Seen On banner gives you that as well. And I call it the low-hanging fruit because everybody can do this so easily. Nobody's doing it. And it's going to have a huge impact on your life and business and your expertise, like you becoming an expert. So what I'm talking about here is if you go to, we drop names today, JJ Virgin, Carmine Gallo, Jack Canfield, I think I mentioned his name. If you go to those websites, I could list name after name. I can promise you they're going to have an As Seen On banner. Bob Proctor, Brian Tracy. And there's a reason. Do you think all these people that have spent all these years becoming the world's top influencers are doing that wrong? They're not going to give up that great space on the website unless there's a reason. So it works. It actually, when you go to some website and see that, like Jack Canfield's, I think it says the OWN Network and Ellen and Super Soul Sunday, you see those things, you're like, this dude's doing it. He's making it happen. And so if you're thinking about signing up for his course, I bet you that one thing alone is going to lean you more towards a yes than a no. So why don't we all do this? And so what I usually find is people say, well, I'm not on Ellen, I'm not in Force, I can't do it. Mine didn't start that way. Like, where's the rule that says, what's the book that says you can't get on there because it's not Ellen? So what I'm suggesting is, here's something everybody listening right now, even if you haven't done, this is crazy, but even if you haven't done one interview in your life, I can get you an As Seen On banner in less than a month for free. And when I say I can get you got to do the work. I'm just saying this can get you one. This is not like a results guaranteed because I got to be there seeing the work you're doing. But if you're doing the work, it will happen. So there's a hack that I'm going to give people called radioguestlist.com. I know I've shared this with you before, Tasia, but it's a website called radioguestlist.com. People can go there right now for free. And on the top right-hand side, sign up for their newsletter. So what's going to happen is the very next morning, you're going to start getting emails from them every day with 4 or 5 interviewers, maybe more, looking for guests just like you. And so what I'm suggesting is they're taking the time to put an ad together to find a guest. So they're willing to bring on new guests onto the show. So what I want you to do is apply to, let's say there's 5 a day. Just apply to every one of them every day for 10 days. So 2 weeks, 10 business days. I bet you're going to at least land in one in 5. I mean, that would even be a low result, but let's say 1 in 5. So that, well, the reason I'm saying that number is that means in 10 days, you're going to have 10 shows you can be on. Then the next 2 weeks, you're going to do those shows. Most podcasters do pre-record, so they'll schedule you right away. So in the next week and a half, 2 weeks, you'll do 10 interviews. Now, there's a side benefit. If you've never done any media, now you have 10 media clips for your website. You have 10 media clips you can share with clients who are thinking of hiring you. So you get all kinds of bonuses. But let's stick to the point at hand, the banner. So now what you do is you get the logos from those 10 podcasts. And if you're a designer, it's still free. You design your banner and you put it on your website. If you're not a designer, now here's the big cost. $25 or $20, you go on Upwork or 99 Design or Fiverr, and somebody will create a beautiful banner for you to put on your website. So in 3 weeks, with either no money or $20, you can have the As Seen On banner on your site so that when people come to your site, they see you in a different light than they ever have before. And my bet, Tasia, is for most people that do this, whatever their closing ratio, we call it, is, it's going to increase. Like if I go to 2 people's sites, looking them side by side, everything was equal, and they've been seen everywhere, and one hasn't been seen anywhere, I'm sorry, but even knowing what I know, I'm still going to lean toward the person that's been seen everywhere. Even if it was just, and this is the reason, even if it was just for the fact that I say they're a go-getter, when it made that happen, I want to be working with an action taker. But the bigger reason is because psychologically, when we see these banners, we think, wow, the media has vetted them. The great news to finish it off is there's 1.5 million plus podcasts in the world. And because of that, none of us really know how many listeners are on each show. And why that's good for the As Seen On banner is most people are going to see those 10 logos and they're not going to know if they're the biggest shows in podcasting or the smallest. So you can get on small shows, get 10 interviews done, get your logos, have an As Seen On banner. It will change everything. So I bring this up because that's another way you can stand out from everybody else, because most non-thought leaders and influencers aren't doing this. But you can be the one that is. So that's a hack I would give people for sure.
That's a great hack. And again, it's I do believe I have one. I know it's on my LinkedIn. I have to go back and make sure that I have it on my website, but I don't think I keep forgetting to update it because, of course, it's, again, that's the administrative part. I like this part. I like the talking and the listening and the learning, and then it's that part. But I know that that's part too, that you probably help people, get the VAs, get your structures, get your systems in place, because that's another piece of it, right? That when you are overwhelmed, you can get help. Is that something that you also will be helping people with, to kind of get those structures in place?
It's more so for that type of thing. It's more around sharing with people what they could tap into to get that done versus holding their hand doing it. And I
Oh
always say
yeah, yeah.
that
I
because
just meant like giving
everybody,
them the resources of like, well, this is what, if you
yeah,
want to do that, these are places to go to get that, the Upworks and the VAs and getting these systems in place so that you can do what you do best and not, be the one trying to be the everything.
yeah, and to your point, yes, one of the things we're planning to do, which we haven't done yet, everything's kind of a work in progress with our influencer vault because it's very new. But one of the things we're adding to it as well is a resource list. So that's and we want to categorize it so you don't get overwhelmed even in the resource list, like looking at it. But things like if you're building an email newsletter, here's the 5 different places you can go, and here's what I like about each one. But to your point, yeah, same idea. Upwork, Fiverr. I haven't used 99 Design, but I always mention it. So I'm giving them promotion, even though I've never used it. But I know people that use it that love it. So I mean, I feel it's on the same level. Everybody, I think you get stuck with the one you like. So I've used Upwork the most. And then Fiverr, the reason I started using them is Kelly, who does our books, she went with somebody at Fiverr to do the book design. So I actually set up a Fiverr account just to work with her. And she's done the first 4 book covers of Blue Talks, and I love them. And I don't think I'd switch from her. So I'm now on Fiverr because of her. So it's good because I learned the platform if I ever need it. But I would say my 5 or 6 go-to people for flyers and all that is all Upwork. But yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. People always say, how do you get so much crap done? And I think they think I'm sitting there designing the flyers. Now, I know I can do like the most basic of basic flyers, but she does these gorgeous things and turns them around in a day. Like, it's amazing. I send her a message at 9 o'clock and say, and so I know it's short notice, but I need some flyers today. Can you do it? And she'll be replying 2 hours later, ready to work. Send me the stuff. And before the day's over, she could send me 20 flyers back. It's insane. And by the way, the pricing, right? What's that? Sorry?
I think that's another point, that you can get the help to make it happen if you just can, utilize it as opposed to feeling overwhelmed and then not doing anything. You were going to say about the pricing?
Oh yeah, I was going to say the irony of the whole thing, and this is with everything now, but those 20 flyers, like, I don't know, 10 years ago, maybe less, would have probably cost me $2,000, and they would have told me it'd be about 2 weeks. And now the flyers, and if they were all 20 separate flyers designed separately, that could cost me 8 or 10 grand. But what these flyers are is usually if we're doing it for an event, they're like a flyer of Tasia, a flyer of somebody else. So they are the same design. So she can work before design, but she's got to change all the words, all the faces, all that. That alone would have been $2,000 or more with a traditional graphic designer. But the bigger issue was they would have said, we need 2 weeks to get it done. Right. And she's like, done. And so I'm paying like a tiny fraction of what it used to cost. And she's over the moon because I keep going back to her for like 3 years. And I send her a lot of work. Like, if I compared what I send in Upwork to somebody else, I mean, she's getting, sometimes I go a week or 2 without a project, but there's times where I have 5 projects in a week. So she's like, oh my God, you're like my best client. So it's a win for both of us. And again, I would have probably had to spend 40 grand in the past for what I'm maybe now spending 5 grand a year. And I'm doing a lot of stuff to get up to 5 grand. Like, I'm not talking like 1 or 2 things. So yeah, to your point, we're all overwhelmed. I mean, we'll keep circling back to that. We're all overwhelmed, but there are definitely things you can use. And what I'm trying to help people do is get more time back. So one of those things is knowing a resource list and knowing what's available. Some people are newbies and knowing a VA exists. Some people don't know what a virtual assistant is. Some people don't know what Upwork is and stuff. So it's helping people learn that and say, here's the resource. But then, of course, some people that are with us won't need that, or they're already past that. So really, it's like, here's the resource, here's the website, here's why I like it, good luck type thing. But we're still getting you to the website and opening up your mind to the idea that you could hire somebody to do that flyer that you just did that looked horrible and took you 5 days to do. And that's, early on, I mean, I've gotten to the point where it's acceptable what I can do with a flyer. But that took years. Like, if you saw the first stuff I did, and especially the like PicMonkey and things like that have made it possible now. But whenever I was starting, I mean, you had to do it all like on, they call it InDesign or Macintosh stuff. And I was just like, I don't have a clue how to do that. So I would try to do it, and it would just be like words were going over top of faces and everything. And so that's not
that's like mine too.
Yeah, so it's not my cup of tea. So yes, to answer that 100%, you can find people that now that you can get to help you with these type of things. When I do training around this, I'll even talk about how you select the right person and the importance of getting the right person. You notice I said with Upwork, I keep going back to the same person. I don't go out and get a job every day and hope for the best. So what I do is I basically find the person that I mesh with and who does an amazing job and quick turnaround. We both get along, and then I keep going back to them over and over again. So it's just like I've hired basically an assistant for design. And the great part is I can call her when I need her, and I don't feel bad that I'm not helping. I'm not paying her bills whenever I don't need her.
Yeah, no, there's so many opportunities now. It's just having a roadmap, which is something that it sounds like you're providing from people that are at every different level, from the people that are just in the newbies to the ones that are, in my category where I'm trying to level up. But sometimes I get overwhelmed with what way to go. So it sounds like you're really helping people with a mission to maximize their time and also be more of an influence as opposed to just kind of slapping it against the wall and hoping for the best. So with
Absolutely.
that, I know we're kind of running out of time. I would love to know, like, obviously, how can people reach you for the influencer vault? I know you have a masterclass starting next week, a free one, and also for the TEDx. These are all three things that people, I mean, if they want to just at least get in touch with you, what would be the best way for them to find you so they can ask you the questions and get in on some of this amazing information that you are sharing with the world?
Well, thank you so much, Tasia. And I did happen to look at one of the places this is streaming. I mean, it's streaming, like I'm looking at top, I think 10 places, but I happened to notice a couple of comments at one place. And one of them was a question around TEDx. And so I'm going to answer this and then lead into the close of everything else. But it's by my buddy, George Morris. And George is he's one of our Blue Talks community members. He's also in the Influencer Vault. And he was just over at the JJ Virgin interview. So he said, here I am back again. And he said, there have been several healthcare TEDx talks. What is the possibility of having someone with experience to give my message? And so I think if I read his question correctly, he's wondering, George is one of those, and he said this openly, so I'm not saying stuff he wouldn't say, but he's constantly looking for how can I get my message out with the most efficiency and sounding the most effective. And so I think what George is asking is, can you have somebody else deliver your message during a talk? Now, my answer to that is I haven't really seen it done in the TEDx world, but I don't think that means it can't be done. So it's almost like if somebody said, I want to write comedy, but I don't want to be on a stage doing comedy. Well, I know people that have done that where they found somebody who really is good at comedy but can't write the material, and then they're the writer. And so I think that's possible. But George, I'd be more inclined in that circumstance, and you and I can talk offline about this, Tasia and George, we can talk offline, either of us. But I think I'd be more inclined to see if I could partner with someone who can deliver the message, but you still be on the stage. So George is a scientist, like you could bring cool props on and you could be both doing the talk, but then you're relying on them a little bit more to do the message if that's what you want. I think I'd be more inclined to do that than you not be on the stage at all, George.
But then
Because
also, can you have people like myself who help people coach people who don't have the confidence but have the message? I think that's like an important part that George should be the one delivering his message and get to work with people that can support him because you help with the facilitation and the work and the crafting of it. But my passion, and I know there's other coaches out there, can help them gain the confidence to be able to deliver their own message. I think I think to your point that George has a passion and a mission that he should be the one delivering the message.
yeah, I think, and again, I think he should be either on the stage with the person or he should be the person. But I don't. My thing is, I don't think he should be in the background, George. You just like helping them with the content. I think you should be involved. I seen George present once, and it actually maybe twice, but once for sure. George, you can confirm which if it's once or twice at Steve Olsher, because I know he's big on Clubhouse, and Steve runs the New Media Summit, and that's where I met George. And he spoke his message, which I won't go into too much details because it's his story to tell. But basically, he's trying to fix the healthcare system through what he knows as basically a scientist and being in labs and stuff. And he's really passionate about this. And he got up and talked, and he was tearing up. He was emotional, and he got basically a standing ovation when he shared his message in 10 minutes. And then that photo, I told him he needs to get it from Steve if he doesn't have it. They actually use his photo to promote New Media Summit now. The photo of him while he's there talking. So George, you're the highlight of the New Media Summit for photos, and people cried with you and gave you a standing ovation. So I think you can deliver your message. It's just, I think what George is worried about is maybe he finds it hard to kind of articulate it in certain ways. But to your point, Tasia, I think that's more the massaging of the message and helping the person than it is giving it to somebody else. So that was a long way to say I'm in agreement with Tasia. Either deliver it yourself, or if you're just absolutely adamant, I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to deliver it myself, I still think you need to be on the stage with the person and find a way that you're incorporated into it. somehow. And there are people, there are two-person TEDx talks. That does happen. So just if somebody's wondered, can people be on the stage? Yes. And so I think, that's just my take. I mean, I don't know that if you found the right TEDx event, what you could do, which I think would be even super cool because it would stand out, is have you on a chair and somebody else on a chair and interviewing you and pulling it out of you. That could be
Yeah.
a TEDx talk. And so it'll be almost like a round table TEDx talk. So I think there's options. So George, let's take this offline later. I just wanted to answer it since I saw his question. So to answer your question, Tasia, about the influencer vault, everything else I have going on. First of all, the influencer vault, we kind of touched on what it is anyway, so I won't spend a lot of time on it, other than to say it's a member site where we help you basically raise your visibility and your expertise and your influence and your credibility in a shorter amount of time by giving you access to those opportunities. I already shared about the list. I shared JJ Virgin was with us earlier today. We bring on a different influencer every week live, and you can ask questions in real time. JJ was today. Next week is Les Brown. Week after that is John Gray, who I mentioned earlier, Men Are From Mars, and Bob Proctor. They're on back-to-back days. So for people that join with us, you get to be sitting there live and ask questions from some of the greatest thought leaders in the world. And that's going to continue all throughout the year. Tasia Valenza is going to be joining us for this as well. And our friend Catherine Roy is going to be joining us to talk about LinkedIn. Shay Robot, for those that know Shay, is going to be joining us to talk about LinkedIn. Shay's at 700,000 almost followers, Tasia, on LinkedIn, and she started 18 months ago as a non-celebrity. I think she knows a thing or two about LinkedIn. Catherine's been crushing on LinkedIn for a long time, knows her stuff. And so we're bringing people on to teach that kind of stuff. We have monthly trainings. We have the classic stuff inside the vault, which is basically just stuff that had been recorded before. So it's insights by Mark Victor Hansen talking about how to sell millions of books. And if you don't know who Mark is, he's the chicken soup for the soul guy. So that's 600 million books. He knows a thing or two about selling books. And so you get to learn from the best of the best. Again, not to overwhelm people. You get to choose the parts that speak the most to you. But basically, we're giving you access to what normally I would have to charge thousands of dollars to teach you. And the coolest part of this whole story is it's for $44 Canadian, or which works out to 35 US a month. So we're basically like, I don't know what that's like, 7 Starbucks coffees a month, and you get to sit in front of people like Bob Proctor. And so I've been working on this forever to try to get something like this put together for less than $50 a month. And I finally did it. So I'm super stoked about that. And since I've mentioned all that, I have to at least add, people will say, well, it's a member site. Can I join anytime? The answer is yes. As long as we keep it open and ongoing, you can join anytime. But what you lose is if we increase the price at any point, then your price will increase. But if you come in now, the price never changes. The big one to me is, even though we have new guests every week, do you want to watch Les Brown in a replay? Do you want to watch Bob Proctor in a replay? Or do you want to be there live? And I'll never bring, I don't think, them on a second time, because I don't want to use up my favors and ask for them to come back twice. So truly, you'll probably only get one chance to be there live with some of the greatest thought leaders ever. So coming in now means you get to see them. And then the other big one, which is more of a bonus, is I have a speakerpreneurship, entrepreneurship masterclass that I created a couple of years ago, maybe 4 years ago. Sold it for $450. It sold out. It was 125 people came into it. And then we've never sold it again. And the only way to get into it since was to sign up for one of our programs where it was a bonus. I decided to put it on for June as a bonus. So for people that sign up for the Influencer Vault for $44 a month, you get a masterclass that we literally sold for $450 a month, and 125 people bought in less than a month. So that just comes with it. So I really tried to layer it because I want June to be our launch month. So I tried to layer Tasia so that it's a win-win and almost, for lack of a better way of saying it, a no-brainer. So in about 5 to 7 minutes, that's the Influencer Vault.
Awesome. And again, I'm absolutely flabbergasted with the amount of people that you have gotten to interview over the time. I mean, it's off the charts. We could talk about that for another year, but you have gotten doors open that most people just don't even attempt. So I'm always blown away about who are you influencing and who are you interviewing next. So you're an incredible human, you're an incredible influencer, and you are definitely changing the world, and you've certainly changed mine and anybody that I know that has been connected to you. And I'm really, really grateful for this opportunity to get a chance to get to know you more and to share with the audience of what makes you tick and why you're doing what you're doing, and how you always come with your heart as well as your expertise to help people. You're a very special individual, and I'm grateful for you.
Well, I've said this a couple times this week, but you also have just made my week. So I say that because I've had a couple people have just been so kind to me. So I appreciate you, Tasia. And it goes right to the top of the list. Thank you for making my week. And I should mention for people that may be saying, well, where's the link for this thing? I just
Yeah.
should mention that I put it in the comments here, which I think will bring it over to every platform we're airing on. But just in case, I'll go over and make sure it's sitting there in the comments. But I put up the link, and it's literally as simple as you click on that link. It's going to bring you to the main Influencer Vault page. But what you do there is you could literally just put your name or initial and your email, and you're going to get our free top 10 insights guide and some free cool videos, insight that I learned from Les Brown that changed my life. And then what that does, it redirects you to the website for the Influencer Vault, where you can sign up or read about it and stuff like that. So
Cool. And
the
I'll
link
have
is
the
in the
same
comments.
one on my, I think I'll have the same one, right? I have the same one on mine in case people can't find yours. At least I'll have it on mine. I think I put it on there. So either way,
Yeah.
people will find you.
Yeah, it's the same link as well. And of course, anybody who's listening here is probably connected to you or I on Facebook or LinkedIn or wherever. So if for some reason they're not seeing the link, of course, they can reach out to one of us. I can send it along.
Yeah, I know. It gets a little confusing with all the links because even I'm like, and this morning I was like, if people want to find it, is your link somewhere? Where do I put the link in? Because there's the link to you have the TEDx to the master class to the Influencer Vault. But if people are specifically interested in the Influencer Vault, you will put the link there and people can
Yeah.
find you.
You said you made a great point, Tasia. I didn't say the masterclass. Maybe I'll drop that link in there as well. And the short version of that, well, if I drop the link, you'll be able to read about it. But just in case, it's called Activating the Domino Effect. And it's basically me helping people figure out which dominoes they need to push down around these things we've been talking about, like media, TEDx, what have you. I'm going to cover most of those things in a deep dive masterclass. So instead of an interview, it's going to be more of a training. And then we're going to finish that with an open Q&A for everybody. That takes place next week on Tuesday, June 22nd at 2 p.m. Eastern. Again, that's all on the page. And then the other part, since I realize I don't want to leave a stone unturned, you asked me about the TEDx. And what I would say with our Branded Top program, stay tuned. Because I haven't decided on many variables, but I know that I'm being asked a lot. So it's coming. So I'll keep people
I
moving.
have to do things in order so that you don't get so overwhelmed because otherwise you won't be able to to
Absolutely.
serve everyone since you got a lot of things on your plate right now.
Absolutely. And I will say the other cool part is the 2 links that I'm putting in here. Either of those links, once you jump in there, you'll be in our community anyway. So you'll know when we do the launches of the other stuff anyway.
Awesome. Well, this has been
Very cool.
a pleasure. And, you give great voice. And like I said, to be able to interview you has been a gift for me. So thank you so much for letting me, share you with the world.
Again, I'm so privileged for you to say that. That's so kind. I thank you. And with your permission, Tasia, we'll call it a to be continued.
To be continued.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. We'll